He was influenced very much by Jesus Christ and the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus Christ had a particular concept, which was that uh, all are equal in the eyes of God. Okay? All are equal in the eyes of God. That is the concept that you will find in Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ also said, you know, God tests those who are his favorites for their faith. And Gandhi held the view that all religions are the same. Okay, he just said they are different uh, routes or different paths to the same destination. There's only one God. So he used to say Ram, Rahim, because in the context of India, communalism was a big thing. So Ram and Rahim, he said, and he called these people uh, Harijans, like Jesus Christ said that these are the favorites of uh, God. So that's how Harijan as such came. The children of God, people who are children of God and are favorites of God. That is the influence of Christ on Gandhi. And I think I told you once before, Gandhi very famously told the British, I like your Christ. He actually said, I like your Jesus Christ, but I don't like you Christians. He said this to the Englishmen who were ruling us. He said, you have become what you have become because you have forgotten the teachings of your Jesus Christ. That's what he said. So that is the reason why uh, I think Gandhi belonged to a Vaishnavite tradition, and that's the reason why he called them Harijans, and he organized temple entry programs. And apart from organizing temple entry programs, he believed in Ram or Rama as it should be, but North Indians and well, Indians who are on the western side, if I say West Indians, then they'll become the West Indies people. Uh, they say Ram. They even greet each other as Ram Ram Bhaiya. Okay. So they don't say Rama. Um, they simply say Ram. So he always said, "Hey Ram," and that those were his last words as well. When he was shot by Godse just before he died, he said, "Hey Ram." Uh, and since he had this devotion to Hari and Ram, he had temples of Ram built in the places where the Harijans were. He said, if you don't let them into temples, he did organize a number of temple entry programs, but beyond that, beyond that, he argued that uh, if you don't let them into the temple, I'll take the temple to them. That's actually how the Birla Mandirs started. I don't know if you're aware of this. The Birlas actually funded a number of temples. They were not grand structures. Don't go by the Birla Mandir of Hyderabad or the Birla Mandir of Delhi. The Birla Mandir of Hyderabad is the most magnificent uh, Birla Mandir anywhere in the world. It's a very expensively built temple, built completely with marble. Um, so he didn't, they didn't sponsor these kind of Birla Mandirs, but they sponsored a number of small, smaller temples, which are Ram Mandirs. So you'll see all Ram Mandirs are closer to where the untouchables were, or they are they were originally in the area where the untouchables were. So prior to that, there was no building of temples for Ram, and that is why I'm not even sure if the temple that is now being built after the demolition of the Babri Masjid. Now, it is quite possible that the Babri Masjid was built on a demolished temple, yes, but was it Ram is the question, or was it some other incarnate of Vishnu? Okay, that is something that we are not sure of. That being the birthplace of Ram is a matter of faith rather than a matter of what should we say, rather than a matter of uh, reality or truth with a small t. So, in fact, Lucknow, which was originally called Awadh, okay, before it became Lucknow, it was called Awadh. Sometimes they wrote it as Oudh, sometimes it was written as Abadh. That was supposed to be the Islamization of Ayodhya. So the real Ayodhya is supposed to be Lucknow, actually, according to some historians. But the present day right wingers claim that that is Ayodhya, and there was another city attached to it, Faizabad, which has also been converted to uh, Ayodhya now by Mr. Adityanath. So that is the genealogy of Harijan and that of uh, Dalit. Dalit, not Ambedkar. The first person to use it is Jyoti Rao Phule. Uh, Nothing Mahatma about him. And like I told you, he was a contractor for the British. He built the various jails, including the Yerwada jail uh, near Pune, where several Indian freedom fighters were actually incarcerated. And he was somebody who told the British that he believed in their leadership. So it's not just Veer Savarkar who told the British that he believes in them. It was also Mr. Jyotirao Phule, and he became a Christian. Um, and that's how he started getting contracts for himself. So that is Dalit in Maharashtrian is oppressed or socially depressed, and that is the preferred choice of words by um, what should we say, Phule and Ambedkar. Harijan was chosen by Gandhi, and like I said, yes, in the north, even today they say we are Harijans, and they stand by the Congress party, most of them, because they associate Gandhi with the Congress party. Whereas in Maharashtra and bordering areas like Telangana, and because it was unified Andhra Pradesh, it also went into, or undivided Andhra Pradesh, it also went into that particular place where you find Dalit, but Dalit is not used elsewhere. It's not used so much in Karnataka. It is not used very frequently in uh, Kerala and also Tamil Nadu. So that, I hope, answers your question.
Yes, sir. Sir,
Mm,
but I have one more question, sir.
mm.
Some faculty told us that Ambedkar himself asked all these deprived classes not to use the word Harijans because it's a derogatory term. Is it a made up story or true?
It might be, it is not in the realm of the impossible, but it is not a derogatory term at all. That
But is it true, sir? Ambedkar himself said it is a derogatory word and not to use, or made up
um,
one?
that I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's quite possible Ambedkar said that, not to use it. It is quite possible he did. That's what I meant by it's not in the realm of the impossible. But I don't think it's a documented thing properly. It might be true, but Gandhi didn't use it derogatorily. Like I told you, it was the Christian influence on Gandhi which made him use that term. Okay,
Yes, sir.
yeah, it is
Thank
quite
you, sir.
possible. Ambedkar said that. It's quite possible. It's very possible because Ambedkar uh, had a problem with Gandhi and he wanted to tell the people who belong to those lower untouchable castes not to take part in the freedom movement. In fact, I have been through this before, and I'm just going to say this very, very quickly. Uh, the strategy that Ambedkar had was that, the British would treat everybody, Brahmin or Dalit, equally. And so he thought that is better than independence, where the upper caste would dominate the untouchables. But that theory is flawed. It is not, there is an error in it. Because please remember that if you're talking about the Brahmins were close to the rulers who were Muslims. They were the Karnama writers. They were co opted by the Muslim rulers, and that is the reason why Ziauddin Barni, who essentially advocated a genocide sort of thing, wanted to start with the Brahmins and then go to the other castes. Okay, that's how Ziauddin Barni said, first you should get rid of the Brahmins, because, and his lamentation was that there was great patronage being extended to the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas by the Muslim rulers, whereas uh, they were not, the Muslims themselves were not getting that kind of a patronage. Now, even in the British civil services, it was entirely dominated by the upper castes, and in that, mainly it was the Brahmins. Uh, so I don't know how Ambedkar thought that the British would treat the upper castes and the lower castes as the same. They wouldn't, because the upper castes were the educated castes. So they were able to find some kind of employment within the British Empire, within the British Empire. And did untouchability disappear or lessen during the British rule? It didn't. So that particular theory of Ambedkar's, that all will be treated equally by the British, does not hold water when you look at our history. Untouchability did not vanish during the British rule.
But he asked for separate electorates.
He asked for separate electorates. Did they give them? Separate electorates would have simply meant that they will go into, they will become another marginalized section of society. Imagine what has happened to the Adivasis today, the actual Adivasis. Who are the ones who are taking all the scheduled tribe reservations in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh? It is going to the Banjaras or the Lambadas, whereas very few Adivasis, we don't have the tribe word tribe here, and there is no description of the tribe as to who constitutes a tribal person, and that is the reason why, though the Lambadas, despite their being gypsies and not tribal persons, have the status of tribal people in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. In Karnataka, they have a backward caste position. In Maharashtra, Rajasthan, they are OC because they claim that they are the descendants of Prithviraj Chauhan. So they are considered upper caste. So now you've given reservations to the tribals. What happened with that? He asked for separate electorates, which would have increased untouchability even further. That again is the wrong strategy. That again is the wrong strategy. And when we talk about reserved constituencies here also, now also, what has that done for the upliftment of the untouchables, even in the present times? Maya, could you switch on the fan, please? What has it done in the present times as well? Hmm? Not much. Not much. Like I told you, Ambedkar himself said that the reservation strategy didn't work because people co opted themselves into the elites and they didn't identify themselves with their brethren who were exploited. And like I told you, the reservation strategy has meant that if this is the bottle, now somebody has put a stopper here. Those people who are below aren't ever going to come out of the bottle. I may be lynched for saying this, but so be it. But that is the truth. That is the truth. Who's stopping reservations from going to more and more people? The strategy of reservation will work only if there is de-reservation after 2 or 3 generations have availed of it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It'll work only for few. It's never going to bring about equality. What it'll do is it'll create inequality among these people, the lower castes. So, despite Akshay saying that Ambedkar had a good strategy, I humbly disagree with you, sir.
I
Separate,
didn't say, sir. He said that. I said that he wanted to create separate electorates.
That would have meant that they would have been seen as a separate nation within a nation. Separate electorates would have meant a nation within a nation because they are not so big in numbers. Look at what happened to Mandakrishna Madiga when he launched a political party. He went into oblivion. When he launched a political party, the Madiga party, he went into oblivion. So we have history which tells us all these stories. So anyway, let's get on with empiricism, which Madam Padma asked me in the morning and I told her in the evening. So Prashant and Akshay, please forgive me. I'm not going to take this discussion further. Uh, However useful or useless it may be, but I stand by what I'm saying. And I'm not a casteist. I don't follow the caste system. I don't think assertion of caste identities is the best way to get rid of casteism. Assertion of communal identities, that was also suggested, right? Diarchy in the Montague Chelmsford reforms and the Government of India Act of 1935. Diarchy was suggested, two separate, uh, what should we say, power centers, Muslims, that is a communal electorates. It is from that Ambedkar got his idea of a separate electorate for Dalits. So communal electorates would have meant we would have had Muslims electing Muslims, Hindus electing Hindus. It was rejected. Would we have been in a United Nations nation if Muslims were ruled separately? How is that even possible in the same territory? Were you going to say then that is the basis of the division, isn't it? That is the basis of the partition of the country. So if
Sir,
you,
from independence till now, how many um, Dalit PMs have become
how many?
till now? Prime ministers of a scheduled caste have become.
What does it? Mm, how does that impact in any way? See, you're talking like a politician. Hmm? How
Yes.
many? Let me ask you. Let me ask you. You're saying how many Dalits have become PMs? All right. Let me ask you another question. Indira Gandhi becoming PM, did it change the position of women in India?
But
Did it?
they should have representation.
What representation do they have? Indira Gandhi was the prime minister. What happened with that? How did it help? Now you said you'll have seats reserved for women candidates. Okay? Seats reserved for women candidates. And when seats were reserved for women candidates, what happened? Their husbands were running the thing from behind. The de jure power is the woman. The de facto power is the uh, man who's her husband. You know, this due to the pandemic, the serial, I think, didn't have more than 7 episodes. But if any of you have access to Prime Video, you can see the serial called Panchayat. It is made as a hilarious thing, but it has a serious message. The woman is the sarpanch, but nobody treats her as a sarpanch. It's a husband who's treated as a sarpanch. So these things don't mean anything. They don't mean anything. How does it matter? That tomorrow a Reddy will say, how many Reddys have become prime ministers?
So
How
many are
many?
there.
Hmm?
Isn't it this? Chinna Reddy,
No, prime minister.
Ravichandra,
I'm talking about
Prime
prime
Minister,
minister.
Neelam Sanjeeva Reddy.
He was not a prime minister, he was a president.
But he held a higher position, isn't it?
So did K.R. Narayanan, who was a Dalit.
I hope he is the single person who held.
Hmm?
I hope he is the single person who held president
You
or
Now, that's what I'm trying to tell you. These are all not things. See, if you give, this is what I meant by tu tu mai. Okay, this is not the way to argue out a
I'm not
case.
going.
This is not the way to argue out a case. Because you show one instance of this, somebody will show another instance of something else.
yes,
Somebody will show another instance. If you don't mind, this is a call that I have to take. Just give me a minute. Hello. Good evening, doctor. No, 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 no. Actually, the work has started, doctor. It should be over in another maximum 5 days. Yes, doctor, we do have cupboards in both the bedrooms, but not in the same size as newer bedrooms have. Yeah, yeah, they're there, doctor. There are plenty of cupboards. Yes, doctor. No, no, curtain rods are there. For the windows, I'll get them put in, doctor. Because my one room didn't have, so I'll get the curtain rods put in. No, no, I'll get them put in so that you need to put your curtains. So, mm, cupboards are there. Cupboards are there. Not very big, not like the modern wardrobes kind of thing. Yeah, yes, doctor. Yeah, yeah, yes, doctor. Yes, doctor. I'll do that. Yeah, no, they're working now. Actually, what happened is that on the there has been accumulation of water and moss on these uh, chats, as they are called. So I'm getting that also removed, and I'm also trying to get the front of the house painted so it looks better than what it is now. So it'll be, yeah, yes, doctor. Yeah, yeah. It won't take more than a week, doctor. I mean, that's the outside limit. That, that's absolutely the outside. Okay, yeah, yeah, sure, doctor. Sure. No, no, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, Akshay, I am not anti-Ambedkar, but I'm
I am
basically,
also not anti-Gandhi, sir.
mm, so I'm just trying to say the world is big enough to have many great people. We don't have to keep putting one down in order to build somebody else's reputation. Okay, it needn't be Gandhi or uh, Ambedkar. Like I said, I have a great deal of admiration for Nehru as well, though I don't endorse everything that he did. But one thing that we should always remember is these people are acting in a crisis, and we have the benefit of hindsight. We have history in our sites, and therefore we can now, after all these years, we can sit and analyze various things. We can analyze various things today, which is something we that this luxury was not available to people who were fighting their battles against the British, against whatever. That luxury they didn't have. So they had to think on their feet, whereas we can sit back and think wherever we are. Okay, I'm extremely sorry, but I'm not going to continue this discussion now because Padma, are you there or have you left?
I am there, sir.
Okay. I was just wondering, maybe you thought, okay, there he goes again. And yeah. And I'm sorry I had to take that call in the middle because that is effectively the end of the AVR Institute in its physical form. Mr. Prashant, Mr. Rakesh, and Ujjwala, uh, because I have decided to give that house to my physician, whom I have known for over 40 years, and he wanted some details. He wants to move in there. So my first floor is no longer the AVR Institute. So that is being given away to someone.
But we are still here, sir.
Online,
It's
yes.
alive.
As long as your people come, it's alive online. It's
Yes.
up to you people. It's entirely up to you people. Yeah. So Prashant, you shouldn't go by what people tell you when they try to tell you that so and
Yes, sir.
so.
That's why I asked you down
Hmm,
to get clarified, to get
yeah.
clarity.
No, even if he said that, it doesn't matter.
Yes, sir. But just to
No.
get it clarified, I mean, clarification purpose.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. I understand. Yeah. But let's not pull this further.
Yes, sir.
Then it generates ill will
No, sir.
unnecessarily. No, no, I'm not saying
Here,
you will. Uh,
uh,
usually, these kind of things do. Not between you and me and all, but between people. That it's a bad thing that this is being said in classrooms. Anyway, so let's come to empiricism. Uh, when we talk about empiricism, we should again visit the Greeks. The word empiricism comes from the Greek word Empeira. Okay, that is the Greek word Empeira, and its Latin translation is experiential. Now, experiential in English can be both experiential or it can be experience. But I suppose you understand that there is a difference between experiential and experience. Now, if somebody asks me how many years of experience do you have as a teacher, uh, so that is an experience uh, of one variety. But if you say, I have experienced pain, then that is an experience of another variety. Okay? The experiential is something that actually, is there a way of taking this arrow back up? Oh, good. Experiential is that which we know so Empeira approximates to the idea of sense perception. It isn't a direct translation. Please remember that. That's the reason why I have put in the Latin translation of it. Somehow, even when we are using the Greek terms, we always use it with the mediation of Latin. Okay, uh, so experiential is what we know through our senses or through our sense perception. Now, there is a school of thought, though this word existed in the Greek period, there wasn't any major school of thought. There weren't any great philosophers who believed that, who basically believed that, uh, what should I say, uh, who believed that experience is the way of gaining knowledge. That's why when I was teaching Aristotle, I said, when Aristotle talks about teleology, that's not experiential. Okay. Uh, we'll talk about that in the class tomorrow when I talk about Aristotle and his teleology, the telos. How do we know it? That is again intuitive. Okay, it's not experiential. So Aristotle is not an empiricist, despite his being somebody who believed in the inductive method of inference rather than the deductive method of inference. Okay, so most of the Greek terms have been have been moderated, yes, uh, uh, by Latin terms, and that's how they have come into English. Okay, so now this is something which is physical. So when we talk about empiricism, uh, real empiricism is something that came into the modern world. Prior to that, you don't find empiricism as a major thing anywhere. There might have been one or two people who will talk about, might have talked about experiences or experientia or Empeira in Greece. If the word is there, somebody must have used it. Otherwise, the word wouldn't be there. It's as simple as that. But apparently, it was not such a big thing because history doesn't document any major thinkers or schools of thought based in Empeira. So, if you're looking at experience, this is something that has come to us, or experiential. This is something that has come to us through John Locke. This is something that has not come through John Locke. This has come through John Locke and his essay concerning human understanding. Okay, it came through John Locke and his essay concerning human understanding. Uh, I told you he used the concept of tabula rasa, which is let's translate the idiom into present day language, a blank paper on which nothing is written. The literal translation will be empty tablet of stone on which nothing is carved. That shouldn't be what we are looking at because we don't carve on tablets of stone anymore. Okay, so that can possibly cause greater confusion because we have totally different meanings of tablets. Okay, uh, so tabs and tablets, we have a different understanding of that. So let's not bring that. Let's take it as, let's use a modern idiom for the equivalent. Let's say that it is like a blank paper on which nothing is written. So if we go by this, then you should uh, basically understand one thing, and that is uh, John Locke is the figure who is probably, he's not being an empiricist himself directly, but he kickstarted that kind of thinking which culminated in empiricism. Okay, now empiricism, what does it believe in? Okay, empiricism claims that true knowledge is something which is experienced through the sense perception of various objects that constitute the world. Now, that is the definition of empiricism. Empiricism derives itself out of positivism. The actual movement called empiricism derives itself out of positivism and the belief of positivism that the only way, oh, All this thing that we've, it derives itself out of positivism and the belief that positivism held that the only way to know anything about this world is through that which can be experienced. If you can't experience something, then you can't know it. Okay? You can't know about something which you cannot experience, and that which is scientific, therefore, is real knowledge, because science is something that talks about rationality. Okay, and the positivist and the empiricist definition of rationality is a combination of the sense perception and cognition that was talked about in an essay concerning human understanding by John Locke. So, empiricism also believes that we are a part of the world, we are in the world of objects. We are, it's not like the old ancient Indian belief that the world is contained in us. Aham Brahmasmi. Neither is it like Plato saying that we are born with knowledge. It doesn't subscribe to either of these two kinds of belief. It subscribes to the belief that you will know something only, only when you experience it. That is what it will say. It claims. Okay, so what is rationality? Rationality is not a priori. I hope you remember that. It is something that is a combination of sense perception and cognition. Cognition is the ability to put sense perception into a tangible form. Okay, perception of the senses in a tangible, comprehensible here as understandable form. That is what cognition does. Whatever is going into you, your mind, brain is the one. They don't talk so much about the mind as they talk about the brain. Okay, the mind is again uh, not a physical category. Remember that. The mind is not at all the physical category. The brain is a physical category. So, what your brain experiences and how it collates all the different experiences together, and that is cognition. So, in a comprehensible form, which means that in a form that you are able to understand in. So, that is what ultimately empiricism is. Now, the earliest forms of empiricism were, let us say, if you look at Ernst, uh, Mach, okay, Ernst Mach uh, is somebody who who criticizes Kant. I think I discussed this once with you. Uh, what it essentially means is Kant talks about two kinds of things. He says things that exist in themselves. And this idea of Kant was also picked up by Marx later when he talked about the working class existing as a class in itself, where it is a class that exists, but people don't know of it. They don't know that they belong to the working class, and the class is there. It becomes a meaningful category when it transforms in Marx from a class in itself to a class for itself. That means it knows about itself. It knows what its interests are. It knows who its enemies are. It recognizes that the capitalist is profiting at the expense of itself, which is the working class. So that is the class for itself. The class that understands its existence and how its existence is being exploited by the capitalist class. As long as it remains a class in itself, it is a class, but it doesn't know of its existence. It's not aware of its existence. Okay, that's what Marx would say. So, a class in itself is a useless thing. It becomes a useful category when it becomes a class for itself. That is the realization of itself, its interests, its enemies, all those things. This he took out of Kant, though Kant didn't talk about it in the way in which Marx talked about it. He says there are things in themselves. The word he uses for that is noumena. And things as we experience them, that'll become phenomena. Okay? Things as we experience them will become phenomena. Now, what Kant says is you cannot deny the existence of the noumenal world, even though you probably can never know what the noumenal world is. Okay? Now, the best way to explain that, if I was with you in a physical location, I would have explained that by saying, we don't know what is beyond the wall. Or let's put it this way. You people are, let's say, experiencing. Hmm? You can see me. I can't see any of you. But you can see me. And every day when I take a class with you, this is a constant. What is behind me? Okay? What is behind me is a constant. So that is the phenomenal world for you. Okay? Phenomenal, not as, wow, what a phenomenal achievement. Not that kind. That is slang. Okay? The phenomenal world is what you're able to see behind me. But are you getting to see the complete picture? Are you getting a complete view of the room in which I am? You're not. But does it mean that what you're not able to see in this particular frame where I am appearing to you, the things that you don't see in that frame, do they not exist? Kant asks you that question. Do they not exist? Kant says they exist, but you don't know about them. You can't know about them. That is the Kantian position. You cannot know about the noumenal world. You cannot know about it. you know that it exists, that there are things beyond our consciousness, beyond what we can see, we can feel through our senses. And that is why he also talks about this category of a priori rationality. Even though we haven't experienced something yet, you can anticipate an experience. That is a priori rationality. Prior to something happening, through your imagination, not imagination here as in stupid imagination. Let me draw on English literature. Samuel Taylor Coleridge basically draws a difference between what he calls fancy and imagination. That which is fanciful is something which is in the nature of a chimera, Chimera. Okay, Coleridge. Akshay, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Have you done Coleridge?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Literary criticism.
Yeah. Did you do
Primary
this?
imagination.
Hmm.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You did the fancy part also, the fanciful part.
Yes, sir. Primary imagination, secondary imagination,
Right.
fancy.
Yeah. But I'm not going to go into primary imagination, secondary imagination, and all that. Coleridge says there is a thing called fancy, which is a chimera, fanciful. Why am I putting this in brackets? What is a chimera? Chimera again is nothing but a fancy. It's a Greek word. Okay. It basically means that which is fanciful in your fantasy, fancy coming out of fantasy. He distinguishes this from that which is imaginative. Okay. But I'm not going to go into. Akshay is a very good teacher. If any of you want to know the difference between primary imagination and secondary imagination, please consult Akshay. Akshay will clarify this for you, right? But imaginative is your ability to think. The rational component is there in the imaginative. It is not something like a chimera, okay? It's not fanciful. It has got a rational component. And the imaginative is that which is imaginative is also that which can be, I'm simplifying it because I don't want to make it a class in English literature, which can be rationally anticipated. That is the simplest I can put in simplest form. Okay, so this kind of a thing is what is a priori according to Kant. Okay, just imagine what will happen to this world if somebody decides to drop a nuclear bomb. Let's forget the nuclear bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Nuclear technology has advanced very much. There are bombs that can, in the arsenal of the USA and Russia, that if dropped can destroy the world several times over, not once. Okay, so every time a test is done, by the way, by a nation which is not categorized as development, even it's not just India that has tested nuclear weapon grade nuclear stuff. Even Pakistan has done it. And the Forbes magazine uh, basically said that from what they could make out, because nuclear bombs are tested underground so that there's no radiation above ground, and it is fissile, it's fission. We don't yet have bombs that explode through nuclear fusion. We have bombs that explode through nuclear fission. So the fissile material strength is gauged by the kind of waves that it sets off on the ground. And the Americans have measured the Pakistani bombs and say that the Pakistani nuclear technology is somewhere near what was the bomb which is called the Fat Man. Okay, the bomb that was dropped on uh, Hiroshima was called the Little Boy. Okay, it was dropped by a plane called Enola Gray, Inlogray. Enola Gray. The bomb that was dropped, the same plane dropped the bomb on Nagasaki as well, and that was called the Fat Man, not me. I am a literal fat man. That bomb was more powerful than the little boy. That's why they called it the little boy. It's not the most powerful. At that time, the most powerful was the fat man, which by today's standard is like the atom Lakshmi atom bomb that we use during Diwali. So the fissile strength of that was calculated by the Americans by taking recordings of waves geographically. They took recordings of that through satellites, not through ground equipment. And they said that these people are somewhere near the Fat Man fissile technology. The efficacy of that nuclear bomb of the Pakistanis is supposed to be somewhere near that of the Fat Man. The Indian thing is apparently slightly, only very slightly, better than the Pakistani technology. None of these come anywhere near the strength of the bombs that are there in the arsenal of Russia. Though we say Russia, most of them are actually in Kazakhstan, those bombs. Those nuclear bombs are actually located in Kazakhstan. Uh, so, this we can understand a priori. What will happen if Pakistan drops a bomb on India? You can understand because the strength of the Pakistani nuclear technology has been estimated as what would be this, what was the strength of the fat boy, and the damage of the fat boy caused by the fat boy is available to us. So you will say wherever it is dropped in India, it'll create that kind of a thing. There is a gradation. I don't remember that. Please forgive me. I'm a political science teacher and a bad one at that. And so I don't remember how many times more powerful the Indian nuclear fissile technology is. And the fissile technology of India is likely to cause greater damage to Pakistan. And you also take into account the size of the territory of Pakistan and the size of the territory of India. And then you will see which bomb can cause more damage to which country. Okay. If it is any of those bombs that the Americans and the Russians control in Kazakhstan, if they are dropped, then the world will be destroyed several times over. Okay, that's what people say. So that's all a priori. Nobody has dropped these bombs. We have the technology for it, but we don't yet have. Some people say we have the bomb made. Some people say we can make it when we need to, both in the case of Pakistan and in the case of India. That's what people say. But one can estimate the damage that they can do available through the data that is available from satellites which have actually seen the ripples that have been caused by the underground explosions of Pokhran 2 and the subsequent Pakistani nuclear experiments. Okay, that's a priori. Now, Ernst Mach is somebody who says all this. No, for him, this is not knowledge, this is conjecture. This is conjecture or a certain kind of a guesswork, if you like. Okay, let's call it guesswork. Guesswork that will tell you that this is the kind of damage. Mark will tell you, you will know the damage only after the bomb has been dropped, not before. What you know before is only a conjecture. If Pakistan drops a bomb, well, that might be something which is more than the fat man, or even probably less than the fat man. Because when the first Gulf War broke out, uh, Iraq under Saddam Hussein basically dropped missiles in Israel. Okay, now Iraqi missile technology was not indigenous. It was based on the SS series of missiles of the erstwhile Soviet Union. Okay, the SS series. They started off as SSX. When the X is there, it means that the missile is still uh, is still in an experimental stage. Okay, that's what it means, that it is still in the experimental stage. But when X is removed, then it's no longer the experimental stage, it's in the finished form. Now, apparently, the USSR sold a few duds to Iraq. Iraq was supposed to have a certain number of missiles that were capable of a certain kind of damage. The SS, if I'm not mistaken, this series of missiles was the SS-15 or SS-16 missiles that Iraq had. And they named them the Al-Hussein missiles. Now, these Al-Hussein missiles that the Iraqis had didn't even land. They were supposed to be laser guided. Okay, the trajectory of the missile was supposed to be laser guided, but it didn't land where they wanted it to land. It was supposed to land in Italy, what am I saying? In Israel, because Israel is an ally of America, and when America declared war on Iraq, Iraq thought its response should be to drop. It can't drop. It doesn't have intercontinental ballistic missiles. It doesn't have. So if you look at that, then they didn't even land in the place that they were supposed to land in. They landed far away from where they were supposed to land. They almost landed in the Palestine part instead of landing in Israel. And the nuclear warhead that the missile is carrying was such a dud that it didn't do any damage. So what did the USSR sell to Iraq? That became the question. But that's going away from what we are discussing, which is empiricism. So Mach will say precisely this: drop the missile, drop the bomb, fire the missile, drop the bomb, then you have knowledge about what it can do. The Americans called these scuds, these missiles that the Soviets called the SS series, and what the Iraqis called Al-Hussein series. The Americans called them scuds, SCUDS, scud missiles. Okay, so What is important is that the Scud missiles didn't do any damage that the Americans anticipated. They didn't, which means that what you calculated a priori were wrong calculations. That is precisely what Ernst Mach says. He says if there is a world of things in themselves and they are beyond our consciousness, says why talk about them? No need to talk about the noumenal world. We talk about the world that we experience, which is the phenomenal world. So he says no need to talk about, no need to even say that things exist in themselves. They might, so what? I don't know about them. We don't know how many galaxies there are. We don't know how many galaxies there are in the universe. So I talk about that. Talk about what you know through experience. Through experience, through the things, objects that you can touch, smell, see, feel, taste. That is knowledge as far as Ernst Mach is concerned. And Mach is considered to be one of the earliest proponents of the empirical methodology. The field studies that you do today are all those which come from empirical methodologies that were first put in place by Ernst Mach. Some people add even the name of Richard Avenarius. Along with Mach, people say Mach and Avenarius laid the foundation stones for empiricism as we know today. Even though the book written by Avenarius is actually called Empiriocriticism. Okay, but by criticism, understand it in the literary form of criticism, that which will tell you the good and the bad. Okay, that's how you have to look at it. So, Avenarius is not such an important figure in empiricism, though some people say he is. Well, I leave it to your judgment whether you want to include him or not. But Ernst Mach is definitely the person who is behind empiricism as we know it today. He takes off from the Lockean. That's why when I spoke to you about Locke, I told you it's not just the two treatises on government, which is a seminal work. Even the essay concerning human understanding is an equally seminal work because it laid the, or let us put it this way, it put up the signposts and said, knowledge this way. Okay, he'd put up a signpost. People like Ernst Mach built on it. So that is the foundation of empiricism. And empiricism is that which Mach talks about as purely experiential, not a priori. You can anticipate things a priori, but that is not knowledge until it is confirmed posteriori. So you can have imaginary scenarios like I told you about what will happen if a nuclear bomb is dropped. It's not entirely without merit, but it is not entirely true either, according to Mach. Mach will say that drop a bomb and see what it will do. That is when you can say this is what the bomb is capable of. Only when you drop a bomb do you know that this is what the bomb is capable of. Otherwise, you do not know what the bomb is capable of. Right? So it's all about objects. It's not, the world is not in us. We are not born with any innate knowledge. Everything is experiential, from experientia of Latin, but it is called empiricism because experientia is a Latin approximation to Empeira. Though the origins seem Greek, they are not. Empiricism is not a Greek philosophy. It's a modern philosophy. Like I said again, signposts put up by John Locke, but it is these German people. The Germans have monopolized all forms of knowledge. Empiricism is also monopolized by them. So, madam, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Have I answered your question sufficiently?
Yes, sir. So everybody should be an empiricist
Not according to me.
because only after experiencing we know things.
That is what Avenarius says. There is a
Hmm.
criticism of that. When we go into doing behavioralism, that is precisely what we'll criticize. We go into
Okay.
what is called post-positivism and post-empiricism.
Okay.
Okay, and again, please remember, post-positivism and post-empiricism does not mean after this, after the rejection of empiricism, after the rejection of positivism. No, it isn't that. It isn't that. Please remember that Geisteswissenschaften that we talked about is anti-empiricism of the Mach and the Avenarius variety. Okay, so there is already a criticism which started with Dilthey, but again, Gadamer makes it an ontological exercise. He makes it an ontological exercise, but still that is not empirical. So all these things will become a little more clearer once we start doing behavioralism and post-behavioralism of David Easton, of which my good friend Akshay Pantulu is a Pandit. Actually, Akshay, you start taking some classes. Huh?
Are you mocking me, sir?
Sorry?
Are you mocking me?
No, Akshay. I don't mock my students, please. Please. Never ever think I mock people. I make jokes, but I don't mock. I don't mock people, especially my students. I told you, my students are like my children. I'm not mocking you. Please don't take that meaning. But you know quite a bit primary, secondary, imagination, Coleridge, impressed. People in Hyderabad
I
don't
have
know.
remembered only the two words.
Doesn't matter, you remembered them, no? I can show you people who have done English literature in Hyderabad and they don't know this. They don't know this. Somebody once told me that John Keats said something about fancy and imagination. I said, what are you talking about? Keats never talked about that at all. At least you have heard of these things. I'm happy about that. And I have great fondness for Prashant. Prashant is driven by a zeal to learn. I like that. Are you there, Prashant, or have you gone?
No, sir, he was not there, sir.
Mm. The moment he must have heard me talk about Locke, he must have left. I know this. Mm. Okay, so tomorrow we will start with behavioralism. All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Sir, one question.
Sure.
Uh, so, sir, Aristotle is not an empiricist.
No,
So he thinks on a priori reasoning.
not necessarily. See, that is what the thing is. We should not look at binaries. We should not look at binaries. There are both a priori and a posteriori in Aristotle.
Okay.
Both are there. Whereas in uh, Plato, it's all a priori because you know everything from birth. So you don't need to experience. But Aristotle is not like that. Aristotle is not like that. Tomorrow, when we do Aristotle, when we start doing that uh, thing about associations, you'll understand what I'm saying. You can ask me this question after I have explained that.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
So I cannot conclude him as being normative also, no?
He's not totally non-empirical. That you can conclude.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay then. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Any
Thank you,
more
sir.
Thank you,
questions?
sir.
Thank you, Akshay. Akshay, I'm not mocking, please. I, hmm? Out of affection for my students, I joke. I don't mock people, Akshay. I don't. Please don't take it that way. Okay?
By this word, did you,
Hmm? Sorry? I
did,
didn't.
did you feel, sir, by this word?
Did I feel?
Yes, sir.
No, I didn't understand. Did I feel? What came after that?
Did you hurt by me saying you mocking me?
No, no, no. I didn't feel hurt. I'm only clarifying. I am only clarifying. I am not hurt. I am only clarifying. It's out of affection that I make some of these jokes. Usually I make it on myself. All jokes I crack are on myself because that is the safest thing to do. That's the safest thing to do. And but once in a while I do crack jokes on my students. But those are not malicious jokes. They are not mockery. No, none of them. None of them. Please remember that all of you, not just Akshay, all of you. Okay? So thank you very much. Kind of you. So I'll see you tomorrow in the morning for Aristotle, in the evening for behavioralism. Thank you then.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Bye, sir.
Bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye.